hope this is like helping people, and we really able to have these conversations just about love language. And I don't want to just, you know what I'm saying, be on here and like be talking like it's like radio. Like definitely tomorrow actually, by the time y'all see this, it'll be tomorrow. We gonna go live. Definitely talk about the love languages. Probably no, I'm lying. We going live tomorrow though. We ain't talking about the love language, but we gonna talk about something else. There's a poll I took that we gonna talk about. We are gonna talk about the love languages a little bit, but mainly just the polls or whatever. So yeah, man. Like hope everybody's doing well. But we back again. We back on point. Back being consistent. Missed last week or the week before last, so I had to double up last week. So I hope everybody was able to watch that. But today we're gonna jump right into it, and we're gonna talk about acts of service. This one is, I said last week I thought quality time was probably the most important one to me. I think, in my opinion, I think it's the most important one. But I think acts of service is the most difficult one. A lot of people is gonna misconstrue it for like gifts and stuff like that, receiving gifts. But in actuality, acts of service has really nothing to do with like actually giving a gift. If you're giving a gift and doing something for somebody, then you're basically tackling two love languages. So I just want to talk briefly a little bit. Like the book is really intuitive and it's very like detailed. And like I said, I will never speak on marriage because I'm not married. But I think really when you break it down and when you really look at it, it's really you're looking at the fact that you're not going to be the same person forever. A lot of us fall in love with the I'm in love, I'm obsessed phase. Like, I'm so crazy about you. Like, I'll drink your bathwater type stuff. Like, we get so caught up in that we lose track of, well, before I even go all the way in there, like you notice, like I always say, it takes a year to get to know somebody. Like a year basically is kind of like, all right, I pretty much know your character. I might not know like the details and everything, but I pretty much know your character. 2 years is to me that mark when you're like, yeah, I know you. Like, yeah, I know you. I know you well enough to know what you would do, what you wouldn't do, what's in your character, what's not in your character, what you like, what you don't like. Like you start to learn all the details that second year. So a lot of relationships really at that two year mark start having issues, or they split because you can hide who you are for as long as you want to. A year, you can hide yourself for a year. It's possible if you're really good at masking yourself and masking um, who you are and just putting on a fake show. You phony basically. You could do that for about a year. You can't fake for 2 years. You just can't do it. People notice stuff. You start to forget stuff. You start to slip up. You start to get frustrated. You start to get anxious. Like different things happen in that second year. So a lot of people, you have a lot of people, especially in our generation, and you see it even in the generation before us. Like you see 30-year marriages getting divorced because like the kids was only thing like keeping them together. You see 6 7 year relationships, high school sweethearts breaking up, and it's kind of like what is that? And you see it like, oh yeah, 2 of those years you were just holding on because it was literally like I've invested all this time in this person and I don't want to feel like I wasted my time, or I have that fear of not being able to start over again, or I just don't want to be with anybody else because this is where my comfort level is. Like you have a lot of people, they stay for different reasons, and you really get to see once you start really getting into the love languages. Like no, literally they're not being fed in a certain area, they're not being cultivated, they're not being watered in certain areas. So then as that area dies, other areas that were warm turn cold, and you get this nasty side of somebody, or you get this cold side, or just nonchalant side of somebody, and you're just like, what happened? And it's really just evolution, and it's really just adaptation to not being loved the way that they need to be loved, or their true and or their true self coming out to where it's like, yeah, these are my issues, like these right here are my issues, and that could be for both parties. But going back, you always revert back to who you were like after the in love stage. Like I said, I can't speak on marriage, but even when you're in long term relationships longer than 2 years, you always revert eventually, like that honeymoon phase or that phase where you just hit a groove and you like, yeah, like, oh yeah, we in this, we done been through a couple things, like we got it, it's in the bag, like we get married like eventually, or we doing whatever, like whatever y'all choose to do, whatever however serious y'all taking it at the time, that stuff wears off. Like it's not like y'all sitting there and it's just peaches and cream the rest of the way. Like nah, nah, nah. It ain't. Like eventually that person who you don't like that's inside of you is gonna come out. Eventually that person that other people have told you in the past they don't like is gonna come out. And that's good. But at the same time, you have to be able to still know how to love your partner and know how to love yourself through your specific primary love language and loving them through their specific primary love language. And that's why I think acts of service, it makes a really big deal. And I think it's the most humbling out of all of these because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes thoughtfulness. Like you cannot do this love language and think I'm just gonna sit back and chill. Like no, you're actually doing things. Gifts you could really pretty much put on autopilot. Words of affirmation, you can kind of muster some words together like every so often, get away with it. Not downplaying it at all. Quality time, you could just sometimes you could just be like, I'm here, but I'm not present. You can really downplay these acts of service. I feel like you have to be. It has to be some of your most genuine things, along with receiving gifts, but acts of service specifically, because it's so detailed and it's so personal to me. Like for you to give your time and your effort and your energy to somebody, all of them are important. All of them take time, effort, and energy. But acts of service is it's a different beast. So normally, like when you, a lot of people are probably watching or I'm talking to 1,000 people, but I eventually I will be talking to 1,000 people. But you know, a lot of people they'll be like, oh yeah, like we speak the same love language. Like that's not necessarily always the case. It's actually a rarity that you and your spouse speak the same love language, or your partner speak the same love language. The issue is that a lot of people who do have the same love language, they'll be like, yeah, it's easy. Like the love language is quality time, mine is quality time. We can't lose. You actually can, because like we said before, like you we have to stop saying, oh yeah, going out to eat is my love language. Tacos is my love language. Like it's funny. Like we get the gist of what you're saying, but it's not factual at all. What actually people are talking about are the different dialects of the love language. So you can have your love language could be acts of service, but like your acts of service dialect could be the opposite of your spouse, and you guys are button heads because you like, well, this is how I show my love, like through these acts of service, and the other person's like, no, that ain't hitting. Like I don't care about that. I care about this. I want you to do this, and you're like, oh, I don't do that, and that's where the friction starts. So first and foremost, it only works. Like acts of service only works if your partner wants you to do it. So if you're just like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna do this, like I'm gonna go. If you're a guy, I'm gonna go mow the grass. Like go mow the grass, gonna do some yard work. Had a night yard looking all nice, so we can go out there. We can sit. It can mean absolutely nothing to her. Rare case, but it can mean absolutely nothing to her. And the woman, it could be like, I'm gonna set the table real nice. I'm gonna go make the bed. I'm gonna do that. And he just like, man, I don't care if you make the bed. I don't care if you set the table up all nice. Like just feed me. I'm getting in the bed anyway, so you ain't gotta make it. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. Like certain things like that really don't could not bother the other person. So in acts of service, like I said, are those making the bed, cooking dinner, mowing the grass, taking care of the bills, just a bunch of different like things to physically show like that I love you. Like Setting the table is one of them as well. Taking the trash out, taking care of the kids, like all of that is an act of service. I'm doing this because you like it and because I love you. I'm doing this out of the love that I have for you. And you you really can't get a it's whenever to me, if you're doing an act of service, you really can't get away with not being genuine. Everyone knows basically you cooking dinner, you got a little stank on it. Like you can't truly serve and and it not be genuine. Otherwise, you're really not serving. But that's for later on. But it ultimately what I got from acts of service is it's not about it's not about being forced to do anything. All the love languages are free will. Everything is about free will. If you are Christian, then you know God gives us all free will. Like he doesn't force us to do anything. Unlike other religions, they have indirect threats or they have things connected or whatever. God is basically saying, hey, the wages of sin are death. You're not gonna necessarily go lie about you stealing a lollipop and die. But the consequences ultimately are that. It's your choice to decide what you want to do. But here's your list of consequences right here. This is the ultimate price you pay, and everything else it could be immediate, it could be delayed. But you have to know that you have free will, and that's also what we need to push when we're loving people. We have to push that this is a choice. Loving me will always be a choice. I'm not forcing you to do anything. A lot of people will always be like, yeah, you ain't going nowhere, you gonna love me, I don't care what you do, you gonna love me, you ain't got no choice. Like, actually they do, fam. Like, you're being toxic. They have a choice. They should have a choice. If you're making it to where they don't have a choice, now they're not even loving you. They're basically pacifying you, especially through acts of service. People, we often be like, yeah, like, even when I was mad at you, I still cooked your dinner, but it wasn't an act of love. It wasn't an act of love. You may love that person in fact, but it was not an act of love. It was an act of obligation because you didn't want to deal with if you didn't make the dinner for them or whatever. And a lot of people will do acts of service out of that fear, out of resentment, um out of just rejection, out of manipulation, just to be like, yeah, I did it for you anyway, or just because they don't want to deal with the consequences that come with their spouse, which isn't fair. And so it should always be a choice. Someone should not be forcing you to love them, because then it's not love. Then you are basically entangled with a dictator, because anytime free will is taken away from anything, you become a dictator, because dictators say, this is what I want it now, this is what you need to do, etc., etc. Like, that's the way that things are built around dictators. Love says, this is what I would like you to do. Love makes requests. This is what I would like from you, this is what I would like for you to do. But if you're not able to do that, I understand. Therefore, this is what I'm going to do if you can't do that. That's not saying, oh, if you don't do this, I'm not going to whatever. It's not an ultimatum. It's not none of that. It's literally a request. And if that person loves you, they will fulfill your request. And 9 times out of 10, most people react better to requests. It's a difference between even for like when you growing up and your mom was like, go wash the dishes, and you like, go wash the dishes. Like, why you say that? Like, why you say it like that? Like, or she's like, can you go wash the dishes, please? Like, that I don't want them in the sink too long, or I don't want them in the sink tonight. Like, most likely you'd be like, oh, I don't feel like getting up. But it feels better to go over there and wash the dishes. Where if she's like, get up and go get them dishes clean. Da 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 da. Like, you just be like, yo, what you on? Like, it's a difference. So it always has to be a request. because requests give direction to love, and demand stops the flow of love. You can't really love somebody who's demanding things from you. You can only love somebody who requests things of you. Like, wow, like that makes people request make people look at things like, that's really all you want from me. That right there, that's all you want. That's really all you want. When you're demanding, they're like, you want the sun, the moon, and the stars, and that might not even be the case, but the way that you're presenting it and the entitlement that comes with the demand is kind of like, nah, I ain't doing this. Like, I ain't doing this. And since we not married, so it's like, I ain't got no ring on this finger. Like, it's the wrong hand, but I ain't got no ring on this finger. Like, I could do whatever I want to. But acts of service force you out of that. It's either going to be toxic or it's going to be extremely healthy, because acts of service can constantly makes you have to work and put in that time and that effort and that thoughtfulness to be like, oh snap, all right, cool. Like, she just got off of work. I know she want to come home and catch her breath. Let me set the table. Let me pull the plates out, and let me turn the oven on for her. And let me get the cutting board for when she has to cook. So all she has to do is walk in there, boom, boom, boom. Or let me unthaw the meat while she's at work, blah, 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 blah. Or let me take it out. Let me take out the meat from the freezer and let it thaw out, and then put it in the refrigerator. So all she has to do is clean it, boom, and cook it, and it's easy. Like, those things like that, like, it takes thought, it takes time, it takes effort for you to just really be like, yeah, like, let me do that for her, because I know those are things that will make her happy, or those are things that'll make him happy. I know when he gets off of work, he literally just wants to sit on the couch, get something to drink, and decompress, maybe throw on basketball, maybe throw on football, and just decompress from the day, may or may not, set up his chair. He don't even gotta come to the table. I set him up a nice little table right there where he is, and that's how he'll do whatever. Like, things like that are those things like that are what help people with acts of service. And it has to be things that they want, and it has to be, it can't be a demand like, when I come home, my stuff better be set up. Like, nah, because she's not going to do it. It's going to become more of a chore. And same thing with her, with him, it's going to be more of a chore to him. Like, all right, like, let me just do this so I can, appease them, and I don't have to hear her mouth, or I don't have to hear their mouth. That's what takes away the beauty of acts of service. Acts of service is like, you know what I like, you know what I want, you know what makes me feel loved, and you're doing it to show me that you love me without any problems. And you might even throw a little twist, you might even do some more stuff, and you might even love me in your love language, but mainly you're loving me in the language that makes me feel the best, that makes me feel the most loved. And the effectiveness comes with the willingness and with the free will, because you can't truly be effective if you're truly not being genuine about doing things for your spouse. You truly can't be effective if you're really not, if you're not willing to swallow your pride, really, and be like, all right, cool. It's not about, even if my love language is the same, it's not about the acts of service that I'm accustomed to doing. It's the acts of service that they are accustomed to being loved in. And then asking them, and being willing to still love them in my love language, and having them be open to yours, because when you're getting what you need, you're more susceptible to give people what they want as well. So I was like, all right, I'm good. I ain't gotta worry about nothing. Like, I'm being loved the way I need to be loved. It's a different feeling knowing that you're taken care of financially. You're taken care of, with the house, the cars, the bills. Like, it's a different feeling with having that, along with emotional and mental stability, where it's like, yeah, I know when I come home, like, he already got it down pat. What I gotta do is easy. I might be tired, I might do whatever, but he's making it easy for me. Or when I come home, she's making my job easy. Like, I don't come home and stress about anything. I come home, it's exactly how I left it, whatever. Or when I go over, whatever, however your situation is set up, that's really what acts of service is all about. It's about making an easier path for your spouse. And really, what breaks down free will and what breaks down the beauty of acts of service is the demands. It's the criticism as well. A lot of people say this is constructive criticism, but criticism drives wedges, and you see it all the time. Like somebody could just lay a verse in the studio, and then they like coming out the booth, and they like, I like, what y'all think? And their boys is like, nah, dog, like, this I ain't hit, like this right here, like like the beat, like they telling you everything, like where you need to do better in, and that can, depending on how it's delivered, depending on how much it is, it could kill your confidence, it could kill your passion. Criticism will do that, and a lot of people will confuse criticism for hating, but that's another podcast. But criticism, when it comes to loving someone in their love language, is detrimental, because you're sitting there and you're like, blah 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 blah. You need to do this. You need to love me like this. You need to love me like that. Don't nobody want this. Like, you just attacking, and oftentimes we get so defensive or offended, because when we're criticizing someone, it's honestly probably the area in which we need love the most. So it's like for someone with access service, it's like, man, you don't even, whenever I get home, like you don't even take the place out, like you don't even wash the dishes, like after we get done eating, or you don't even clean the bathroom after this and that. Like, they're pointing out all the different things that you don't even do. And really, when somebody says you don't do anything, or you don't do this or that, their love language is acts of service. Their primary love language is acts of service, because they're looking at the things that you don't do or the things that you do, and they're holding on to that. Though that is the lasting impression on them: what you do or what you don't do, what you're willing to do or what you're not willing to do. And that's the whole drive of acts of service, is somebody being able to say, you know what I like, and you're doing it to show me that you love me. And you cannot create the will to love. Love cannot be coerced. And a lot of people will be like, well, what do you mean by that? And coerced is basically just like, hey, if you don't do this, if you don't take this trash out, you know what's gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen. And nobody wants to be like, dang, like, you threatening me. Like, even for a man, that's like, oh, you threatening me. You threatening me. What's gonna happen? And he's gonna push that button. And same thing for a woman. Like, what you gonna do to me? You gonna put your hands on me? What you gonna do? What you like? Both sides are gonna always push that button. So it's important to not even go there. And also, love cannot be manipulated. So a lot of people will be like, man, like, if you was if you was a good girl, or you was a good man, you would do this, you would do that. Like, that's manipulation. That's manipulation, because them not doing it does not make them not a good partner. That specific thing, not doing that just because you want that in that specific way, doesn't make them a bad partner. You have to honestly be open to being like, okay, you are a good person. You may be a great person. You might be a great boyfriend. You might be a great girlfriend. But these are still areas that you need to work on, because we're not perfect. We need to perfect these areas. And that is a different way of presenting it, other than you trying to manipulate somebody, or you trying to coerce somebody to get what you want to get out of them. You cannot do both. It doesn't work out like that. You have to instead still have a willingness and still be open to receive, as well as give love the way that that person needs to be loved, as well as the way you need to be loved, and it's the way that you guys love each other. It has to be a two-way street. It cannot just be, I'm loving you the way I want to love you. That's never going to work in a relationship, especially not with acts of service, because you can't just be like, oh, you want me to do something, all right, cool, like I'm gonna take the trash out. That might not move her, because she already made up in her mind that that's a standard. Like, you knew you had to take the trash out when we met, so that's not gonna make me feel love. That's just part of the deal that we made. It's the extra mile for acts of service of doing things that people are really looking at, like, oh, doing that, like, oh, you thought of me enough to do that over there. That's what acts of service is really about. And we have to be careful too on the criticism piece of it, because we'll fall into pacifying our partner because of resentment, or because of them making demands, or them always spewing criticism towards the other person, and not really being understanding and working with that person. People like to make relationships seem either really easy or really difficult. But it really, if you handle it as if it's a baby, it really isn't an issue. A lot of people will be like, well, I don't, why we got to do that? That just seems like, why I'm going to say it like that? But it really helps if you just be like, all right, like, cool. Like, when y'all are on good terms, don't wait until you're on bad terms. Like, that's what we have to work on in relationships. We always want to wait till things bad, and then we dump all this stuff that we've been holding on to, or that we done let slide, and be like, all right, cool, like, whatever. But now you piss me off. Now you about to get it. That's not fair to the other person. We really got to be like, when y'all sitting there laying down, chilling on the couch, like, you macking, you doing your thing, like, right here, or she macking, laying on you, whatever, you know what I'm saying? And you just got to be like, hey, so, like, when I come home, I'm tired. I just be wanting to chill. I go to work at 6. I get off at whatever. I got a 30-minute drive home. I just be wanting to chill, relax, whatever. And she's like, all right, cool. Like, so what you saying? He's like, all right, like, I would really appreciate it if, if you could fix me something cold, like, have it already in the refrigerator for me, so I come home, I can get that to drink, greet you, and I can just go and decompress before we have dinner, or before anything else. Or I would prefer you have dinner ready by the time I get home, being is that you get home before me and you have a little bit of time. Like, whatever that is, like, let that other person guide you on what their dialect is of acts of service. You just being like, all right, cool, like, I know they like for me to do stuff for them. Like, you could possibly be tampering with their independence, or you could possibly be tampering into something that is going to throw off the whole dynamic of the relationship. You do what they are asking, what you know that they want. That's the key to acts of service. It doesn't matter about all your works. It doesn't matter about all the other things that you're doing. Are you loving them the way that they need to be loved in those specific dialects? It's not about the overall love language. It's about those specific dialects. And for them to be able to look back and be on, like, I get, yes, you did this, you did this, you did this, you did this. Yes, like, that, those are all for me, but I got extra because your dialect might be different than my dialect. Like, oh, you mow the grass. Like, I come out in the yard and I just look and it just looks nice and neat. Or I come out and I come into the room. I go in the bathroom. The bathroom's nice and clean. The floor is vacuumed. Everything's mopped, swept. Like, things like those added on top of what he or she already needs just makes the relationship 10 times better. And we have to really understand that acts of service, for people who have the primary language of acts of service, it is vital to be genuine, to do it out of the kindness of your heart. And for people who are receiving, on the receiving end of acts of service, and that being their primary, it's important to not let someone manipulate you through your love language, but also not to manipulate through your love language. So not being like, oh, if you was a good person or you was a good partner, you would do this, and of course not coercing as well, but to really make those suggestions to give that free will. This is what I would like. This is what I need personally for my love language. Boom, 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 laying it out for them, and then letting them decide whether or not they're gonna do that. And then also, on, like I said, when you're trying to speak someone's love language to them, not doing things to filter it into what you want. Like, all right, I'm just doing it so I can get this, and no, 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 no. That's important for you not to do. You cannot do things just to get something back in return or to try to get what you want out of doing this. Like, well, I did this for you, so it's only right that you do this for me. That's not love. At that point, you're in a business transaction. You're looking for an exchange, and love is an exchange, but it is not the manipulation. It is not a transaction that's heartless. We are emotional creatures, so we're always going to be looking for that connection. So acts of service allows you to be like, wow, I felt that. Like when you did that, I felt that. You like, you know what I'm saying? Like it ain't just a whole, okay, well, I do this, you do this, you do this, I do this. All right, cool. We go about our business. To a certain extent, it can be that, but it's not the primary focus. The primary focus is being able to be in a healthy relationship and still being able to connect through these different love languages, and through that primary love language, like we're so connected that I can love you. I love you through your primary love language, and you love me through mine. And now that we've mastered each other's, I can love you in mine and yours, my primary and your primary, and we got a double portion. And now we start operating in the other ones. We start throwing the other ones. That's what makes the relationships so beautiful. Oftentimes we complicate it, and we just think it's supposed to be common sense. Like we were all raised the same. Like we were all living in the same part of the world. We often we don't give people grace, and we don't give people the time of day to really learn and explore us. We just really put those demands on people, and we're like, this is the way I need to be loved. If you don't like it, get out, or you need to do this, or I'm done. And it's a process. A lot of people will really look at, like, it's been 2 years, and no, 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 no. Especially if you guys didn't know each other beforehand, you have to give time for that person to really learn your primary love language. And on top of that, for you have to give time for teaching, and you have to give time for the adjustment, and they have to be committed as well to learning and to trying to do all those things. Otherwise, it makes no sense on why you're together. Because if you're together just because you like being with somebody, you like their company, that doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is, are you able to, or do you have the capacity to love that person through their love language, and do they have the capacity to be able to go through that process and to really be able to accept what you're giving at that moment, and to know that it can get better, it should get better. And we just don't have patience nowadays. That's my little rant though. That's just my little rant. But and the last thing that I really want to touch on is acts of service completely. I love it because it completely destroys gender roles. So that whole notion of, oh yeah, men, they pay the bills, they're the providers, blah 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 blah. They chop the wood. They they're the breadwinners. All this other stuff, like all this like just toxic gender role stuff, and then women are in the kitchen. They take care of the kids. They may or may not work. They cooking dinner, doing all that. It completely destroys that, because somebody's dialect could be you cooking them dinner, and it could be a woman. And she's like, yeah, like my dad. Growing up, my dad used to cook like every such and such, like Sunday dinners. He used to do that, or like whenever I was feeling bad, or whenever certain things was happening, like my dad would always cook me a meal. So that could be her love language, like, oh, to make me feel loved. Like I need you to like cook sometimes. Like I need you to show me like you appreciate me, and like go cook after I cook for you all the time, or if we eating out all the time. Like that could be her dialect for her love language. So that acts of service, it completely destroys everything, because different people feel loved in different ways. Like me personally, I feel the most loved. Acts of service is my secondary. I think quality time is my first. But acts of service is, for me, like somebody doing acts of service for me, it's like, all right, when I come home, the house clean. What? Like I come home to a clean house, clean bathroom. dinners prepared, like, like a couple different dialects to where it's like, yeah, like, oh yeah, you love me, like you hooked me up when I came home. When I came home, everything was in place, like that is my love language. I ain't got no kids, so I can't say, oh, you put the kids down already, you get them a bath already, but just that it's a peace of mind that is already created whenever you come into an environment, and the acts of service have already been done, laid out for you, because they know this is what makes you feel good, this is what makes you feel loved, this is what makes you happy. It's no other better feeling than that. So the gender roles are completely gone. It's really just, they're not even gender roles, they're love roles. Like, what roles do we play individually in this relationship to make this work? Like, what roles do we play? It's no longer, yeah, since you're the man you do this, you're the woman you do this. No, since you love me, this is what I need, and since I love you, this is what I'll do. Like, it works hand in hand, and it is a beautiful thing when it comes to pass. So, but that's it, y'all. Tune in for the next love language next week. If y'all haven't gone back and watched the other ones, the first three, y'all go back and run them up. Them views is disrespectful. Y'all gotta run them up, especially since I'm back on my solo dolo. So y'all can follow me at Mike the Young OG. That's 2 E's and the. And y'all can follow the podcast page at RAPORCAP podcast. If you're following on Twitter, remove the T and add the 1. And y'all tell me if I'm rapping a cap.